So, welcome everyone, and thanks for joining Loudoun Agile Network on this cold winter evening. So, today we have Manjit as our guest speaker. Manjit comes to us with wide experience. He is a certified Scrum trainer. He's an Agile coach expert from IC Agile. He's less certified, SPC certified. He holds patent in digital cryptography. He runs an organization, Agilious. He is the co-founder of that. He is the author of Lean Playbook. He's a leadership coach. So, with tons of experience, here comes Manjeet to share us his insights on how to reignite the power of Agile. So, here you go, Manjeet. The floor is all yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Anju. Thank you, Toby, for the warm welcome and good to see everybody. Let me just adjust one thing here so I can see everyone in a matrix. So perfect. I can see everyone now. So honored to present. I've known Toby for a very long time. Um, so excited to present at the Loudoun Agile Network. I think I probably spoke in person before the pandemic. So it's been a while. Thank you for the introduction, Anju. So, we all are right now thinking about the good old days, right? This is from a few years ago where, there was a high demand for certified trainings. There's high demand for Agile coaches. There was high demand for Scrum Masters. And everyone wanted to be a Scrum Master or a coach. And those were the boom times, as I would like to call it, right? It was a period of almost about 12 years, from maybe 2012 until 2022, or 2010 to 2022. And then something happened. Something happened. What happened? So what I would like you to do is take a quick second, well, take a minute to go to this, scan this QR code or the URL. I'll post it in the chat message here if that's easier. Give me 1 second, make sure I have the right URL. I do. There you go. And if you can give your inputs to what do you think are the reasons that there is a disillusionment with Agile? Just type in a few words to that kind of capture and express your understanding or analysis of what's happening. Can people access the link?
Yeah, we can. At
Okay.
least I can.
Thank you. Didn't mean to put you all on the spot, but I'm sure we have some thoughts about this. Wonderful. I have 5 responses so far. Give people another 60 seconds. Okay, so this is obviously open. You can type in more. Let me share my screen. I thought I changed the share, but it didn't work. I forget to press the share button after that. There you go. So too many ceremonies, overwhelming, considered support function, improvement or evolution, transformation is finite, benefit, I guess, whoever said that maybe didn't, that people are not seeing tangible benefits. Support, change the only constant. We need to say continuous, too many coaches, too many meeting. dilettante, it's hard. So thank you for that input. I'm going to come back to my slide deck. 1 second. So some of these things are correct, but I will share things that I have observed are kind of at the root cause. Okay. First and foremost, I think one of the reasons is Agile has been commercialized, but more than that, it has been commoditized. It has been commoditized. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's the way it's been done. We're seeing the consequences of that. I'll dive into each one of these a little bit more. A focus on process over outcomes. A blind dogmatic kind of adoption of frameworks and practices. And I'll talk about that. The fourth root cause, in my opinion, is middle management has been ignored. And I'll again elaborate on this. And last but not least is a fixed mindset. And many of you are practitioners, Agile practitioners, so you probably know what I refer to this here, but I'm going to paint a slightly different picture about what I mean about fixed mindsets. So let's talk about commercialization and commoditization. What do I mean by that? What we mean is it has resulted in a superficial adoption. People adopting Agile just because it's cool. Everyone else is doing it. How can we be left behind? I'm sure we've all seen this firsthand. I've worked with several customers who wanted to adopt Agile because that's what seemed the right thing to do. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that it just stopped at that point. That was their primary motivation. And that resulted in the adoption missing or not having making an impactful shift within the organization. Because it is superficial. It doesn't go deep and it doesn't stick. It doesn't stick. And then, in my opinion, the reason this happens because it's not grounded in the deeper understanding about Agile. The deeper understanding about Agile, what it is trying to tell us. Inspect and adapt, but how often do we do inspect and adapt? How often do we really value working software as true measure of progress? And what has resulted in this commoditization is a certification factory has emerged. And I'm equally part of this, unfortunately. I'm a certified Scrum trainer. So I was responding to the demand where people wanted certifications. 2-day courses a galore, churning out Scrum Masters and certified Agile coaches. Right? I hope you like my animated GIF. It was hard to find that, but I think it's pretty cool to communicate that is basically like an assembly line. Then comes the focus on process, compliance. Let's go through the motions of the events rather than the value that we have to deliver. Right? So, these, nothing new here. And I'm using Scrum because it's the most common and most popular. And then there are individuals who are just, hey, you're not doing a daily Scrum. It's not 15 minutes. Your sprint review is not happening. You're not doing a retro at the end of every sprint. There is value in these things, but we don't understand the value, so we just go through the motion. We just go through the motion. Then, okay, it froze for a second. We are focused on the metrics, velocity, and burn down. We're not focused on what value we are delivering in every sprint. We just focus on velocity. We all know it's very easy to gain velocity. Very easy, right? So just focusing on that also causes a problem. You could be delivering 100% velocity. Whatever you plan, you're delivering 100% of that actual velocity, but what you're delivering is junk, is of no value, or little value. Let me be a little bit more generous. It's of little value to the customer. And then you have one size fits all mentality, right? It's like, hey, here is it. Here is the practice. Just follow it. Don't question it. Don't think about improving it. Don't think of adopting it. Now, I do want to caution you that I'm not implying that you modify it where it completely veers off the overarching underlying grounded values and principles of Agile. That's not what I'm saying. But it's saying making the tweaks that fits within your environment. That I've seen that very rarely. And I've been practicing Scrum since 2005. Gosh, it's going to be 20 years this year. And I've been doing Agile since 2000. I started with extreme programming when I was a software developer back in 2000. So it's a cargo cult mentality. Everyone is doing it. Let's do it. Let's follow it as prescribed. Then we get to a point where think about how this gets adopted and implemented. So at the lowest level of this pyramid, you see the development teams. They are self-organizing, they're self-managing, they are being empowered. So the notion is management has very little role in that. And then you look at the highest level of this, the top level of the pyramid, and you have leadership that's expecting things to be better, faster, cheaper. What happens to the middle management? They're often ignored. They're often ignored. Either they are just kind of hanging around, but they don't have a well-defined role in a lot of organizations about how do they add value now if the organization is making the shift and this transition. Very few organizations have created a very clear path for middle management. And depending on the individuals who comprise the middle management, they may become a catalyst for the adoption, or they may become resistors. So they oppose. And they oppose not because they don't believe in Agile. I think they are probably not as vested. They don't see a future in the organization as the Agile adoption is happening. And then the fifth and the final reason, at least in my opinion, is the mindset. Let me explain what this means. So we know that individuals have a fixed and a growth mindset. Many of you may have heard about and read the book Mindset by Carol Dweck. And she talks about fixed mindset versus growth mindset. And obviously there's a lot of research that she has done. She has a wonderful TED Talk, and then obviously the book. In general, majority of the population has a fixed mindset. Now, when you look at it at this demographic and this distribution of fixed versus growth, and you look at it within an organization, it translates into an organization equally. If the majority of the individuals have a fixed mindset, what do you think would be their response when you try to bring in a different way of doing things? We try to introduce Agile and agility. So being Agile is one aspect of what we always talk about, right? You have to be Agile first before you do Agile. But being Agile actually what helps an organization to change, because the people are thinking about growth. But if you have an organization that is filled with individuals who have a fixed mindset, they will struggle. The organization will struggle is what I mean. So if you introduce Agile to a traditional organization, which does things in a traditional way, command and control, top-down management, about micromanagement, then the outcome can be predicted. And we've heard this. We all probably have heard this. This will not work here. It's too complex. It's too much change. Oh, we can't work with the business. They're barely available. They don't talk to us. They don't have time. Yeah. How many of you have probably heard something like that? If you could, raise your hand just to give me a visual cue. Okay. And if you are okay, stay on camera. It'll be good. For this as a speaker, it's good to see some reactions. Facial reactions also communicate a lot. Body language communicates a lot. So this fixed mindset, if that exists, the organization now has a fixed mindset, is what basically I'm saying. The organization now has a fixed mindset because of the people that comprise the organization have all fixed mindsets. So, all right, so look at that. The three guys with the turbans are the only ones on the camera. Just a coincidence, but anyway. There you go. Toby, next time I see you, I'm going to buy you a turban. I'm going to bring you a turban. All right. So what do we do? How do we reignite the true power of agility and agile? Here are my 5 things. First, you have to align strategy, execution, and outcomes. Too many organizations are doing agile without understanding how it will drive the outcome that they want. If there is a disconnect, adopting agile will not move the needle in the organization. And how do you do that? You define clear business goals. You communicate across the organization. You over-communicate across the organization what the outcomes are. You measure the success. You measure your success by looking at the actual results, not the metrics of the process. Hey, every team is at 90% velocity. So what? They're producing garbage. Is it generating revenue? Are you retaining customers? Are you getting new customers? Or depending on your product, are you getting new signups? Are people upgrading their subscription? Whatever product you're selling. Don't focus on the metrics of the process. It's like saying, I have an axe that is super sharp. It can cut through steel. But for what purpose? You may have the most fine-tuned process, but if it is not tied to the outcome, it's meaningless. Second, start and work through incremental change. Too many organizations want to do this massive metamorphosis. It never works. Okay? It never works. I shouldn't be so sweeping. It very rarely works. Let's put it that way. It rarely works. Small incremental change research has shown is more successful rather than a sweeping, massive change. So next, you think about, I talked about earlier when I showed the pyramid, the middle management was in the middle. There has to be a balance. There has to be a balance. What do I mean by that? Too many times, organizations are not putting guardrails. They're not putting guardrails around the agile that they're implementing. Do whatever you want. Things are being changed willy-nilly. That's not what agile is about. One of the things in the Agile Manifesto is responding to change. What people don't understand is responding to change for the sake of responding to change because you want to be true to that practice doesn't mean you're agile. You could be jeopardizing everything that you have done because you're trying to respond to this one change that came in at the late in your development cycle. So give them the freedom, give the teams the freedom to innovate, but put guardrails. And guardrails can be can take many shapes or forms. It could be making sure there is a adherence to a certain architecture, a certain design pattern, certain platforms, tools, right? You have to give guardrails. Otherwise, the teams will go willy-nilly and they'll be all over the place. In fact, in a lot of organizations, teams are using tools just because they can, and there is no restriction. And then all of a sudden, you have an organization which has 20 tools to do that one same thing, 15 tools to do deployment, 10 tools to do QA testing. Again, if you have seen this within your organization or in other customer organizations, whoever you work with, raise your hand if this resonates with you, with what I'm talking about. Then you get to, once you have given them the freedom with the appropriate guardrails, it can't be too restricting, and there is alignment on the outcomes, then you have a turbocharged organization and a turbocharged set of teams. So this balance, to go back, is what we need to strive for. It can't be tilted in one direction or in the other direction. You have to find the right balance. And that also requires some experimentation and a few iterations to figure out where does that right balance, kind of exist, at what point. If you do have a question, please raise your hand. If it's a straightforward question, I will entertain it. Otherwise, we'll do a Q&A at the end. This should be a no-brainer. Focus on value delivery. Focus on value delivery. Too many organizations are, like I said, doing Agile, but they are not thinking about value delivery. Every sprint should deliver value. Otherwise, what's happened? Think about a 10-person Scrum team. Let's say it's $100 an hour, right? 10-person team. So that's $1,000 a day, 10 days. You've just spent $10,000. And the team hasn't delivered any value. And I'm being very conservative with a $100 per hour blended kind of a baseline rate. That number is much higher. It's at least 200 or higher. Every time you give the team to develop something, you have to make sure it provides value. And some of you may be aware of this. It's one of my favorite statistics. Research shows that anywhere between 65 to 80% of features and functionality in a product is rarely used or not used at all. I'm going to repeat that again. Research shows that 65 to 80% of features and functionality in a product are rarely used or never used. So if you look at anyone has a traditional set-top cable box, look at your remote, whether it's from Verizon or it's from Comcast. Look at the remote. How many buttons does it have? Anybody? Make a guess. You probably had one if you don't have
50.
one now. 50. And how many buttons do you use on a daily basis? Nicholas?
6.
6. But the organization spend a lot of money, time, and effort testing, making sure those 50 buttons work. That's a prime example. That's what I'm talking about. And because we're talking about an actual physical, tangible object, which is the remote, you can relate to this example. But when it comes to software, most organizations, unless you are a successful Silicon Valley product company, Most other organizations don't have any metrics, whether the feature is providing value or not, who's using it, how many times did they use it, how frequently are they using it, and how they use it also when they use it. They don't have that data. I'll give you one other example and then I'll move on. I work in government contracting. I've often encountered, we have worked on projects where we are modernizing legacy applications. When you talk to the customer, they'll say, everything that's in the legacy system, we want the same capability in the modern system. Anybody heard that? Again, raise your hands if you have. Is that wise? Think about it. You have a car that was built in the 1960s, and you want to rebuild that car. Would you want the exact same features that are in the car that was built in the 1960s? Would you spend money on that? But that's a mindset. So focusing on what is value is very hard because value is subjective, and value has to be made objective by actually measuring. That's where human-centered design, user experience, doing research groups, focus groups, surveys helps. I was reading an anecdote and it said a UX team was talking to a customer and they said, customer said, we want this feature. And they said, why do you need this feature? They said, well, the users have asked for it. And they said, how many users? They said only two. Two users asked for that feature. This goes back to the mindset. So if you are following a fixed mindset, you're taking a very, very prescriptive approach. Here is a framework. Follow these steps. You cannot deviate. You cannot adapt it. It in fact closes the door on adapting what it doesn't work for you. And you get stuck in that state. And I call it the beginner state. You never progress. Because the expectation is you'll follow this as prescribed. As prescribed. And that's called prescriptive agility. It keeps you stuck at that initial state. You never progress. You never go beyond and become more mature, more seasoned, more impactful. You are at the beginner state. It's like you went to kindergarten and now you're stuck at kindergarten. Instead, what we need in the organization is the encouragement of adaptive agility. What does this mean? This means you are continuously looking at your capability and saying, how can I make this, improve this? How can I enhance my capability? What improvements can I make? Okay. And that obsession, it's really truly an obsession. Unless you have that obsession, you will never apply adaptive agility. It is an obsession. People like Steve Jobs, they have been obsessed with continuously adapting, continuously improving. They don't settle for less. I was going to take the name of one other person who has done brilliantly using this particular attribute, but currently he's in the news and is a sore subject, so I won't mention his name. But you can guess who I'm referring to. Okay. So you have to constantly inspect and adapt. We talk about this. We talk about, one of the precepts of Agile is inspect and adapt, and it's an empirical process. Most people don't understand what is an empirical process. Most people don't understand what is an empirical process. An empirical process means you start with the acceptance that I don't know. I'm ignorant. I have zero knowledge. I'm going to try something, and based on that, I will learn, and then I will repeat it and do something better. But that requires a lot of humility. That requires no ego. Because you have to say, I have no knowledge. I'm ignorant. I don't know. If you are not able to express that sentiment, you'll not be successful in successfully being inspecting and adapting. Because if you think you know everything, what's the motivation to try to improve? That obsession and that humility and admission that I don't know, I'm ignorant, is what drives you to the next level. You continuously improve. You continuously improve. Okay? So the takeaway that I want to leave with you is, first, Agile is not one size fits all. It is not. It's a starting point. I'll give you an example. I think this example will hopefully resonate with you. If you're teaching a child how to ride a bike, you may have those training wheels on the bike. Do you leave the training wheels on even after the child has learned how to bike? You don't. Once the child has learned how to bike, one wheel may come off, the second training wheel may come off. You may hold their handle of the bicycle, you may hold their seat. Eventually, you let go of that. And then the child then learns how to ride the bike in their own style, as long as they're following the laws of gravity and the basic principles of riding a bike. Whether they sit a little bit front on the seat, a little bit behind on the seat, or they try to stand and do some stunts, well, up to them, as long as they don't hurt themselves. But they've learned and adapted how to ride the bike according to their own personality, style, and needs. It's the same thing. We start with those training wheels and we never let go of those training wheels. And that's because the mindset is a fixed mindset. Whereas if you have a growth mindset, you would constantly adapt and evolve. So Agile basically says the inherent nature of Agile is you have to embrace change, because change is happening continuously. Whether it's happening at the end, during the sprint, at the end of a sprint, before you start the next sprint, or whether it's happening daily during the daily scrum, or an individual member is adapting how they do the work. So this continuous improvement and continuous inspect and adapt and the drive to be better is where you start questioning everything. You start questioning everything, which we are not doing. I have had individuals who have gone through my Scrum Master and Product Owner trainings. This is the first time they are being introduced to Agile, a relatively first time. And I tell them, this is just the beginning. Please do not go apply for a job as a Scrum Master or a Product Owner. Find a mentor or shadow a more seasoned, experienced Scrum Master or a coach. Learn from them. You cannot sit in the driver's seat. It's like learning how to drive a car. Just because you got a driver's license, just because you got a learner's permit, you can't drive alone on the highway. The certification is the start of the journey, and it's a learner's permit. You're officially and publicly committing to learn how to drive by getting the learner's permit. In the end, what I'm going to say is you have to stay, while you're doing all of this, you have to stay true to the Agile manifesto. What does that mean? What that means is no matter how you adopt, how you evolve, how you improve, how you enhance, it has to be true to the 4 values. You have to follow the 12 principles. And if you do the above, you will realize the power of Agile. So in my mind, it's not complicated, because it is simple. It is hard to do. We all know what meditation is, right? We all know how to meditate. What meditation is? Raise your hands. You all have some definition of meditation. Is it easy to meditate? No, but we understand it. So we understand Agile because it's simple to understand, but it is hard to practice because it requires being true to this, being determined, being intentional, and persevering through the challenges, because you'll have ups and downs. That's the only way you will realize the power of Agile. So as much as you're going to do those other 5 things to ignite the power of Agile, you have to make sure you're not compromising on the 4 values, the 12 principles, as you evolve. So those are my thoughts. Hopefully there was nothing kind of super secret here, but happy to take questions.
Right, everybody. This was a great presentation, and Manjit, thank you for walking us through so many things that about how things have changed in the last decade, and fast forward to today. People have definitely become a lot more pragmatic, but at the same time, a lot of the values and principles have just diluted. So this was an excellent presentation. So if anybody has questions, please feel free to unmute yourself and speak and ask the question, or if you want, you can put it in chat as well, and I'll be happy to curate and facilitate your questions and have Manjit share his insights and thoughts.
I think in my experience, I've seen where a lot of the guardrails and processes start to fall apart. There's different organizational dynamics at play. I've seen team members working with business users who are actually going to be, responsible and grading them for performance. So they just, don't follow the process. They just accept any ad hoc requests, and whoever can make the loudest noise, let's say that I want to get this done, or if it's a senior MD or something. So a lot of times, even if you have those guardrails and processes in place, just things are just like, put on the back seat. So
yeah. Thanks for sharing that. So great.
Yeah, and I've seen that. And you're right, that happens a lot, and some people push back or stand up, and some people don't. I'll give you two thoughts on that. One, I would always ask how taking this on may jeopardize what you're currently doing, and are you okay with that, putting what we're currently doing in jeopardy? Ask that question very politely. Well, we can take this on, but whatever we have now planned and agreed upon may get impacted and may not be delivered. Are you okay with that? And then also, if they say, yes, I'm okay with it, say, just send me an email that you are okay with it, and you take responsibility if this, what we have planned and agreed upon, doesn't get delivered. That's one simple technique. And you probably know why I'm saying ask them to send you an email, because now you have something in writing. Because somebody, some superior, some leader, some senior VP, manager, whatever, is telling you. So you're just following the rule. You're just following the orders. The second thing I would say is, one of the things about Agile, especially in the Scrum, one of the 5 values of Scrum is courage. You have to show some courage. You have to stand up and say, what is driving this request? How does this help us in delivering the product, or whatever it is that you're building? I'm just using the product as a generic term, right? Will it increase revenue? Will it increase the number of subscribers? I mean, and you're asking this, I always ask this question out of polite inquiry, right? Like a child. But why? Can you tell me a little bit more? Right? Just take that kind of an approach. That's all I can say. But I acknowledge what you're saying. That happens a lot. Those are 2 things that come to mind.
thank you for that.
Any other thoughts, questions, experiences people have that they want to share?
I wrote something in the chat, and this is from personal reflection, is nowadays I hear this a lot. If you say Agile values, Agile principles, and they stamp you as textbook Agile. And I think pragmatism has its place, but then doing something blindly without understanding the why, I think can lead to dire consequences because you don't know why, you're just doing it, you know. So all of us old timers or all of us agilists who actually believe in it, and I love this slide, and that's what prompted me to say this, is that no, talking about agile values or agile principles is not textbook agile. It is agile. That's the foundation, and unless you believe in it, you cannot do it. And one of the things that I say often is, I've been a coach for 12 years, or I've been in the agile realm for 12 years, and I've been an agilist for 8 of them, because the first 4 years I was just doing Scrum or doing Kanban. It takes some time before you realize the why behind the how. So I just want to share that.
No, thank you for sharing that, and I agree fully. I agree. Often, there was one comment in the earlier when I asked what are the reasons, and I have it here on my screen. I'm going to just take a quick peek at it. Somebody said too many ceremonies. I get that a lot, and my question is, so 2 things I would say to that. Before you throw out the ceremonies, make sure you try to make sure that the ceremonies are working for you. What I mean by that is if the ceremonies, and ceremony is the wrong word, the event, Scrum event. If the Scrum event is not facilitated properly, then fix that. Don't say you don't need the event. You see, we try to throw the baby with the bathwater. Right? If the bathwater is not clean or is not warm or whatever it is may be the case, replace the bathwater. You don't throw out the baby with it. If the Scrum event is not being impactful, then fix that first. If it still doesn't deliver value, then think about what could you do different. We rush to replace throw the baby and the bathwater together. So that goes back to the values. If you don't appreciate and understand that, then it becomes very easy to compromise and change it. Thank you, Toby.
Okay. Any other thoughts, comments, questions?
I see your other comments that initially came up. Go ahead. Sorry, somebody was speaking.
Yeah, so Manjit, this is Kaval. I'm just going to share an observation. I know that Agile has become a bad word, right? People don't like that, don't like to hear it. But I haven't seen a single organization say that, hey, we are going to go back and do waterfall. I don't know if you guys have, experienced any organization which said, hey, we're going to go back and do do things the way we used to do 20 years ago.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That's kind of what I was thinking about before you spoke up. You mentioned that was that Agile, even though it doesn't, like, people complain about it, maybe it's not delivering the on the goals that that people envision that Agile will deliver. If we do this, it still offers a new and different way of working, right? That has great benefits. So it might not fulfill all of the promises that it was, I guess, promoting, but for some of us who, I'm pretty new to Agile. I've only been doing it probably for the last 5 years in the role that I'm in. And I traditionally came from, traditional background was more waterfall. But I think a lot of folks who have, my experience, similar experience, mostly waterfall development, project management, all that kind of stuff. there are many things about Agile that we love. The fact that so in that's kind of how we're trying to utilize it, right? Like, okay, here, take the best parts of it and use it to our advantage. For example, breaking big efforts into smaller efforts, right? And being able to deliver, smaller pieces of, value sooner and get that feedback. So we do like, now some of the drawbacks we find is with very complex projects, that if you don't spend more upfront time doing some analysis and requirements gathering, then we end up getting very subpar results with Agile, like a pure Agile approach to things. Because often we find is that a lot of folks on Agile teams, developers, and even BAs, Scrum Masters, they want to focus on what they call the happy path, and then try to build in, okay, later on, we're going to deal with these edge cases. But if your architecture didn't take some of those things into consideration, you end up with, like I said, subpar results in the end, and something maybe that's even harder for you to maintain and to modify later on, or that, just doesn't work right or has lots of bugs. So, so it's, just, it's finding for me and for, like I said, folks who have, who have a similar experience or came into Agile in a similar way, there are things that we love about Agile that have been very, very beneficial. But then we say, okay, well, here are some things that we, that have caused us some problems. So how do you, mitigate for that? So.
Yeah, I can relate to that. You're spot on. You're spot on everything that he said. There's too many organizations that don't do the basics, right? It's like I think this is an anecdote from Good to Great, where the author talks about an example of this famous college basketball coach. I won't remember the name, but whenever before they would start practice, he would ask all the players on the team to untie the shoelaces, remove the shoes, and tie it back on, and put the shoe back on and tie the shoelaces again. And a new player came on the team, and he had to also do the same thing. And he asked one of his teammates, says, "This is stupid. Why do we do this? You think I don't know how to tie my shoelaces?"
Mhm.
And his teammate said, "Well, imagine what happens if your shoelaces are not properly tied and you're on the basketball court in the middle of a game. What happens? That's an accident waiting to happen." The coach was driving in the importance of the basics, the fundamentals. That's what it is. We haven't done that, right? We haven't done that. I mean, not too many coaches do that. I do that. I spend a lot of time on that, because until you understand those fundamentals, you're not going to be successful, because you don't have a strong foundation, and that then starts to open a it's like a domino effect.
What's an example of the basic or the fundamentals that you would coach folks on?
Basic fundamentals is understand the vision of the product,
Mm-hmm.
understand the outcome that has to be delivered, identify your features, spend time on refining them and understanding them.
Mm-hmm.
I see so many teams, they barely do product backlog refinement. The
Right.
first thing to talk about a story is during sprint planning. They don't invest in product backlog refinement. I'm going to ask you all a question. Have you ever observed a construction crew on a construction site? What is the first thing that they do in the morning? Anybody?
Stand up.
They do a huddle.
Mhm.
All the supervisors on the site come together. They may be drinking coffee, they may be having donuts, they're smoking. What are they doing? They're synchronizing and coordinating for the day. And they're working with dangerous material and hazardous materials, but they don't have accidents there. Or minimal accidents, life-threatening accidents. Why? Because they spend the time doing that. We don't value that because software, right? Nobody's getting killed because of bad software, even though that happens. Your bad software in your car could cause an accident beyond your control. So to go back to the question Jacqueline was asking, there are certain basic fundamental things that you have to do. Without doing that, you're not. It's like somebody doesn't know how to write A, B, C, D properly, but they want to go, write a book.
Great. That was a great discussion. I see Nicholas, your hand is up. Do you want to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yes, for sure. So I want to take Manjit's, like the kind of like the last 2 minutes of his thoughts, and I would like to propose something else as well, right? So yes, we are Scrum practitioners or Kanban practitioners. We have a great machine that builds something. We need to expand, and I don't want to take advantage of the product operating model, that Scrum.org is doing, but we should be asking the questions, about what's the actual outcome of the product that we want to deliver, right? Or the service. So some coaches were doing that, like the original Agile coaches and the Scrum practitioners were doing it because they were very tied to the business. But the stuff that we were getting trained on, maybe 5 years ago or 10 years ago wasn't that. So maybe once we have built a machine, Manjit, once you've built a machine, you've built the basics, you've taught the basics to your teams, then we should be asking these kind of questions. What's the goals, the outcomes, the impacts of the service, right? So not just do the plain feature delivery, yes, we can deliver something every sprint. Yes, we can do instantaneous DevOps and all that stuff, right? These are the tools. What are we actually delivering?
Absolutely. I call it garbage in, garbage out, right? We are basically, we don't have good understanding of what features we need to build. We just build it and deliver it, but it's garbage in, garbage out. And I'll give you one analogy, and I know we have 4 minutes remaining here, but great question. 2014, I was working with a financial institution. They were building a brand new product related to mortgages. We spent 6 weeks finalizing the product vision. I didn't let them start any development until the vision was nailed down. 6 weeks. And the reason it took so long was because there were six or seven senior VPs who had a stake in the product, and they all had competing interests and outcomes that they wanted. So unless they had a full alignment and consensus, I said, you're not starting any development, period. It took about 6 to 8 weeks. Only then we started development. And guess the success of that product. They were going to use waterfall. They had allocated $13 million. They came up with an estimate, right? $13 million, 18 months for the first release. Using Agile Scrum, we actually use Scrum of Scrum. We had multiple Scrum teams. We delivered that first release in 10 months using only $6 million. $7 million went back to the CFO. In fact, the senior executive in the organization, when they went, the senior VPs went to him to report provide progress. He said, never ever in my whole professional career, an IT project has come in early in schedule and less under budget. That's the power of Agile. That's how we can achieve it, because we have to follow and stay true to the fundamentals. And this is where, as a coach, as a Scrum Master, as a practitioner, you have to show courage. And one last thought, actually 2 last thoughts. Sorry, Toby. One, when I was getting trained as a coach, my mentor said, Manjit, when you start working as a coach, to be an effective coach, you could be a good coach, but to be a really impactful coach, you cannot be afraid to be fired. And that stuck with me. And that stuck with me. So what I'm saying is that gave me the courage, and I said, I don't care. I'll go find another job. But I have to be true to what Agile is saying. And that's where, wherever I've coached, I've had, the coaching has had an impact. And so great question, Nicholas, and I support that fully. And the last thing I'll say before I turn it back to Toby and Meenakshi and Anju, who have been great, gracious hosts. You can see my screen, and hopefully you can see something there which ties to the title. Anybody? Anything that jumps out at you that is
People powered, I don't know.
no?
Agilious, I don't know.
Back to the Future. So the date
Back
is
to the future, okay.
the date is February 12th.
Ah,
Nice one.
yeah,
That was my Back to the Future presentation. Thank you all.
thank you.
Toby, back to you.
Thank you so much, Manjit. And there was so much good engagement from everyone. And I'm glad that your presentation was short enough to give some time for all our attendees to ask questions and share some insights as well. So thank you so much. Meenakshi, over to you.
All right. So thank you, Manjit, and thank you everyone for coming. This has been, your participation enriches the presenter and us as volunteers. So thank you, everyone. We hope that you'll give us the same support in March, where we are talking about agile delivery metrics and what does that mean? Driving outcomes, not reports. So we'll probably take it right where Manjit stopped. In terms of, how many people focus on velocity versus outcomes and how easy it is to game that system. So thank you all. We really appreciate these conversations. They inspire us to do our work every day.
Thank you, Meenakshi. And this year we are celebrating Loudoun Agile Network's 5th anniversary, 5 years since we started, and it's been an amazing journey. We have 2,000 plus members, and we would love for you to come join us and help us become 3,000 soon. So please join us. Every month we bring experts and specialists and like Manjit, authors to come here and share their thoughts with us. So thank you so much. I hope you have a good weekend and stay warm, everybody. Thank you so much.
You too, thank you, bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Manjit.
Thank you.